So we have seen how King Tut's body was discovered by Carter in 1922, and we also saw that there were a lot of treasures, all made of gold and other materials that he would require in his afterlife. So after that, what happened? Let's look at the chapter. To separate Tut's body from his adornments, Carter's men removed the mummy's head and severed nearly every major joint. So Carter wanted to study about the mystery surrounding the death of Tutankhamun, the king, Tut, the young king. So what he did, his men, what did they do? They removed the body, and in order to remove the body, they actually had to chisel it away because it was stuck to the bottom of the tomb because of the ritual resins. Now, what they did, they had to remove the mummy's head and severed nearly every major joint. What is severed? That means broke away. So, the joints of the hands and legs, they tried to break it away in order to remove the body. Once they had finished, they reassembled the remains on a layer of sand in a wooden box with padding that concealed the damage. The bed where now Tut rests. So what they did, what happened after cutting out every part of the body, they studied it, and after their study was over, they reassembled it. That means again they assembled it in the box. That is, they put a layer of sand below, and on that they kept the body. They assembled the body how it should be, and they also put some padding on it. What is padding? Maybe a covering of cloth or cotton or something that concealed. Conceal means that hide. They try to hide every damage that they did to the body, and then they put it back to the place where now Tut rests. Archaeology has changed substantially in the intervening decades. What is archaeology? Archaeology is the study of human history using the sites and the artifacts, etc. So they go through all this and try to understand about the human history. So the writer says that archaeology has changed substantially in the intervening decades. That means in all these decades now, substantial, there has been a great deal of change in archaeology, focusing less on treasure and more on the fascinating details of life and intriguing mysteries of death. So he's saying that nowadays archaeology has changed. They don't focus much on the treasure, they focus on other details such as life and death, how certain people died, or what are the details regarding their life, etc. So those are the details that people try to look through archaeology. It also uses more sophisticated tools, including medical technology. So, archaeology uses sophisticated tools. What are sophisticated tools? More advanced tools. And they also use medical technology in order to find out the details about life and death. In 1968, more than 40 years after Carter's discovery, an anatomy professor x-rayed the mummy and revealed a startling fact. Beneath the resin that cakes his chest, his breastbone and the front ribs are missing. So what happened in 1968? So it was actually about 40 years after Carter's discovery. So when did Carter discover the body of Tut? It was in 1922. So after some 40 years means 1968. There was an anatomy professor, and when he x-rayed the mummy of Tut, he revealed a startling fact. That means he told everyone, he showed everybody a very surprising fact. What was that surprising fact that this man found out? Beneath the resin that caked his chest, that means just below the resin that was covering his chest, that is Tut's chest, his breastbone and front ribs are missing. So this anatomy professor found out that the breastbone and the front ribs of Tut are missing. How did he find this out? He x-rayed the mummy of Tut, and so he found out that these were missing. The breastbone and the front ribs were missing. Today, a diagnostic imaging can be done with computed tomography or CT, by which hundreds of X-rays in cross section are put together like slices of bread to create a three-dimensional virtual body. So in those days, it was the X-ray that was used to find out the details of the life and death or whatever. But nowadays, what do we use? CT scan. Have you heard of that? So that's called computed tomography. Now this is an advanced technology where you can actually get a three-dimensional image Like you can have hundreds of x-rays put together, so you'll get a very clear 3D image of the body, and you'll be able to create a virtual body and study more details in a very clear manner. What more would a CT scan reveal after than the X-ray? So people are just worried whether a CT scan can actually reveal more details than the X-ray. And could it answer two of the biggest questions still lingering about him? So all are just worried. They just wanted to know whether doing a CT scan would give us the answer of the two questions that are still lingering. Lingering means staying around about him. How did he die and how old was he at the time of his death? So these are the two most important questions that all the people who are doing study about Tut are trying to answer. What are those two important questions? How did he die? How did King Tut die? And how old was he at the time of his death? King Tut's demise was a big event. King Tut's demise means death. So when he died, it was a big event because he was belonging to a royal family, even by royal standards. He was the last of his family's line, and his funeral was the death rattle of a dynasty. So he says that King Tut was the last in his dynasty. He was the last heir from his royal family, and his death was the death rattle of a dynasty. So his death shook the whole dynasty because he was the last heir of the royal family. But the particulars of his passing away and its aftermath are unclear. So it is not clear about how King Tut died and what happened after his death. Amenhotep III, Tut's father or grandfather, was a powerful pharaoh who ruled for almost 4 decades at the height of 18th dynasty's golden age. So now they're telling us a little bit history about King Tut. So King Tut's father or grandfather, that's also not very clear. And his name is Amenhotep III. So this Amenhotep III was a powerful pharaoh. Pharaoh means king of the 18th dynasty. And this man was able to rule for 4 decades during the golden age of this 18th dynasty's period. His son Amenhotep IV succeeded him. That means after Amenhotep III died, who came to rule, who came to power? It was Amenhotep IV, and initiated one of strangest periods in the history of ancient Egypt. So during the time of Amenhotep IV, they say that it is a very strange period. So we look at why it was called a strange period. The new pharaoh promoted the worship of Aten, the sun disk, changed his name to Akhenaten or servant of the Aten. So who's the new pharaoh? The new pharaoh is Amenhotep IV. So what did he do? He promoted the worship of Aten. Aten is the sun disk, and he changed his name to Akhenaten or the servant of Aten, and moved the religious capital from the old city of Thebes to the new city of Akhetaten, known as Amarna. So he changed the capital, he changed the religious capital as well. He further shocked the country by attacking Amun, a major god, smashing his images and closing his temples. And he also did one more thing. What did he do? He broke all the statues of, he destroyed all the statues of Amun, who was the major god at that time. And he also closed the temples and smashed up all the other images during that time. It must have been a horrific time, said Ray Johnson, director of the University of Chicago Research Center in Luxor, the site of ancient Thebes. So this director of this University of Chicago, so he also gave his opinion telling that that period must have been a horrific time. Which period? The time of Amenhotep IV, because he destroyed all the temples and images of the major god who was known as Amun. The family that had ruled for centuries was coming to an end, and then Akhenaten went a little wacky. So that family who had ruled for all these years was coming to an end. What happened at that time? Akhenaten went a little wacky. This man, he became a little bit wacky. Wacky means a little bit crazy or whatever. After Akhenaten's death, a mysterious ruler named Smenkhare appeared briefly and exited with hardly a trace. So after the death of this Amenhotep IV, there was a new ruler and his name was Smenkhare. but then he was there only for a small period and he did not leave any trace of his rule or his works, whatever he did. And then a very young Tutankhaten took the throne. So after this Menkaure, then came a small ruler, a very young ruler, and his name was Tutankhaten. King Tut, as he is widely known today. So this young ruler is actually King Tut, and his full name is Tutankhaten. The boy king soon changed his name to Tutankhamun. So this boy who became the king, he changed his name. His name was first Tutankhaten, and later he changed it to Tutankhamun, living image of Amun. So Tutankhamun means the living image of Amun. So who is Amun? Amun was the major god during his father's and grandfather's time and oversaw a restoration of old ways. So what did he do when he became the king, when this young boy, when King Tut became the king? So he started restoring the old ways. That means he started bringing back the old, the devotion to Amun and all that. Remember, his one of the rulers called Amnotep IV had destroyed everything, but this boy was able to restore everything. He reigned for about 9 years and then died unexpectedly. What happened? This King Tut, he ruled only for about 9 years and suddenly he died. Regardless of his fame and speculations about his death, his fate, Tut is one mummy among many in Egypt. So nobody knows what happens to his fame or about his fate or whatever, and he is one of the many mummies that still exist in Egypt. How many? No one knows. So we don't know there are how many mummies still in Egypt. The Egyptian Mummy Project, which began an inventory in late 2003, has recorded almost 600 so far and is still counting. So there's a project called the Egyptian Mummy Project. It began an inventory. Inventory means collecting the mummies. And this started in about late 2003. And it was able to collect about 600 mummies so far and is still counting. That means, and still they are continuing their work to discover more mummies. The next phase is scanning the mummies with a portable CT machine donated by the National Geographic Society and Siemens, its manufacturer. So this project, what is the first thing? First thing is they have to discover the mummies. And second thing is to scan the mummies to find out all the mysteries surrounding the mummies. So the machine, the CT scan, is actually donated by the National Geographic Society and the manufacturer of this machine is Siemens. King Tut is one of the first mummies to be scanned in death as in life, moving regally ahead of his countrymen. So King Tut is one of the first mummies to be scanned in death. So just like how we scan the bodies during the lifetime, so here King Tut's body is one of the first mummies to be scanned, and he is first among his countrymen because all the other mummies are still to be discovered. So regally moving ahead means royally moving ahead of others. A CT machine scanned the mummy head to toe. So the CT machine was able to scan the mummy from head to toe, and it created 1700 digital X-ray images in cross section. So it was able to show 1700 digital X-ray images. So such was the precision. It was so clear. Tut's head scanned in 0.62 millimeter slices to register its intricate structures. So the head of Tut was scanned in 0.62 millimeter slices. So the measurement of the image was just 0.62 millimeters, and it was able to register the intricate structures, means it was able to show all the fine details of the head, and it takes on the eerie detail in resulting image. And finally, when the result was given, every fine detail, that means every eerie detail means every strange detail, was shown in the resulting image, with Tut's entire body similarly recorded. So the whole body of Tut was scanned in a similar fashion. A team of specialists, so who were doing the scanning? A team of people. So who all did they consist of? A radiologist, forensics people, anatomy. They began to probe the secrets. So they started looking into the secrets. What are the secrets they're trying to find out? How old was Tut? when he died and how did he die. So they wanted to find out this, so that is why they were scanning the body. And they began to probe the secrets that winged goddesses of a gilded burial shrine protected for so long. So they wanted to find out the details of this body that was protected by the winged goddesses in a burial ground, in a burial shrine. The night of the scan, workmen carried Tut from the tomb in his box. So on the night of the scan, on the night when the scan must be done, the workman carried the body from his tomb into the scanning machine. Like pallbearers, they climbed a ramp and a flight of stairs into the swirling sand outside. Like pallbearers. Who are pallbearers? The one who carries the dead body. So they are called the pallbearers. So they were like pallbearers. They were holding the body of Tut, and they climbed a flight of stairs, because we know this body was tomb was some 26 feet below the ground. So they climbed up the stairs, and when they came out, what was the environment outside? We know that there were angry dust devils. So there was swirling wind outside. The sand was flying around, and then rose a hydraulic lift into the trailer that held the scanner. And then they put the body into the scanner. The scanner was actually a mobile scanner, and they put the body into it. 20 minutes later, two men emerged, sprinted for an office nearby, and returned with a pair of white plastic fans. So as soon as they put the body inside, what happened? Two men came running. Why they came running? Because they wanted they wanted a pair of plastic fans. The $1 million scanner had quit because of sand in a cooler fan. So why they wanted this plastic fans? Because the sand had entered into their cooler fans and it had stopped working. The scanner had stopped working. Curse of the Pharaoh, joked a guard nervously. So one of the guards who was standing there, he joked. What did he say? See, the fan is not working because it is the curse of the Pharaoh. Because you're trying to disturb the Pharaoh, so that is why the fan is not working. Eventually, the substitute fans worked well enough to finish the procedure. So the substitute plastic fans which they got was able to do the job, and the scanning was over. After checking that no data had been lost, the technicians turned Tut over to the workmen, who carried him back to his tomb. So after the scanning was over, Tut's body was taken back to the tomb. Less than 3 hours after he was removed from his coffin, the pharaoh again rested in peace where the funerary priests had laid him so long ago. So for 3 hours the body was out for scanning, and after that it was back into its tomb where the funerary priest had laid him. So back in the trailer, a technician pulled up astonishing images of Tut on a computer screen. So trailer here is the mobile scanner, that van which had the machine and all that. So in that, the technician pulled out some astonishing images. They were so astonishing, they were so surprising, because every detail was very clear. So the screen, on the computer screen, they could see the images of King Tut. A grey head took shape from a scattering of pixels, so they could see the shape of the head of the mummy, and the technician spun and tilted it in every direction. So we know that CT scan can give us a 3D image. So here also they were able to look at the 3D image of King Tut's head. The neck vertebrae appeared as clearly in an anatomy class. So the neck vertebrae, the neck bone was very clear. Anatomy class is where you study the body parts. So it is as clear as that. Other images revealed a hand, several views of the rib cage, and the transection of the skull. So different parts of the body was clearly visible, including the skull. But for now the pressure was off. So now the pressure was off. The Sahi Hawass who was doing this project, who was overlooking this, was tense till now, because he was worried about the safety of the body. He was worried about the result, what he is going to get. But now when the scanning was over and when he looked at the images, he says the pressure was off. So there was no pressure at all. Sitting back in his chair, Zahi Hawass smiled, visibly relieved that nothing had gone seriously wrong. So he was relieved that everything was well and there was nothing seriously wrong. I didn't sleep last night, not for a second, he said. So because of these pressures that he had, so he was not able to sleep last night, but now he feels very relieved. I was so worried, but now I think I will go and sleep. So Zahi Hawass feels that he will be able to sleep now because he is relieved, and he has been thinking too much and he understood there is nothing wrong, and so he says that he is going to sleep. By the time we left the trailer, descending metal stairs to the sandy ground, the wind had stopped. So as soon as the trailer left and as soon as the body was laid back to its place, the wind stopped. So everything was like normal again. The winter air lay cold and still like death itself in this valley of the departed. So in this valley of the departed means people who died. So in that the air was still very cold and everything was very still. Just above the entrance of Tut's tomb stood Orion. So always, you could always find this constellation Orion just above Tut's tomb. What is constellation? A group of stars. And this constellation, the Egyptians believed, is the soul of Osiris. Who is Osiris? It is the god of afterlife. So they thought that this god was always watching over the boy king. So they thought that he was being guarded by the tomb of Tut was guarded by the soul of Osiris. So at the end of the CT scan, Zahi Hawass was feeling relieved because he understood that nothing seriously had gone wrong with King Tut.